Front row.
Appreciate the proactive. Yes, absolutely.
No, you don't feel like you're the blue light Valentine's Day. Okay. Good evening, students and parents and neighbors and educators, to the meeting of to order. And our first order of business is always public forum. If you wish to speak in public forum this evening, well, I guess before I get ahead of myself, our meeting is conducted under the provisions of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act, which is posted in the back of the room. And we do start our meetings with public forum. If you wish to speak in public forum, we ask that you let us know by filling out one of these sheets so we can call you forward. We invite you up to the table here so we can hear you well. Just a reminder on what you can expect in public forum. You have about 5 minutes to speak. I'll keep a timer here and give you a little notice when you've got a minute left or so. So you can conclude your comments. We do that so that everybody has an opportunity to speak in public forum. Ask if you have any feedback regarding the district staff member, that not be taken up in public forum, but addressed through our other policies in administration. So I think with that, we're ready to begin. And yes.
One thing you want to note is did you note the Open Meetings Act in the back?
Clumsily, I did, but yes, thank you for the reminder. Megan, you're first. I invite you to come forward.
It's all right if I take my mask off.
Certainly, if you're comfortable.
Hello, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak in front of you today. My name is Megan Wilkinson, and this is my 3rd year at Bennington High School. The band program is one that I admire. I'm thankful to be a part of it every day. Band is a home for students to find their place and to find themselves. It has grown exponentially across the past few years, and I am proud of what we have accomplished. However, our materials and staffing are lacking. Let me reiterate, I am not talking about the music program across the district. I am not talking about the Badger Singer Club in elementary schools. I am not talking about the specials within elementary curriculum. I am not talking about the general music teacher who was recently approved for elementary schools. I am not talking about bass choir, treble choir, or music theory within the high school. I am talking about the band program within the school district. The instrumental music team teaching model would utilize 3 teachers, 1 for high school and 2 for middle schools. An individual high school director can provide certain expertise and knowledge that a middle school director cannot. Right now, we do not have this. We have a director that has struggled to provide for 230 plus students for the entire band program. It is lack of staffing that is causing the issue. No school that is in Class A in music has a band director that is split between both the middle school and the high school. The closest comparison to our current band system is only seen within Class C and Class D schools. We are a program that is Class A. We are a band program that received the highest score at the Nebraska State Marching Band as our debut into Class A, and we are being provided Class C and Class D materials. This is unfair to our band students. With a dedicated high school band director and 2 middle school directors, an incredibly successful band program will be created for the entirety of this district. I am unbelievably lucky to have the chance to perform at honor bands as a part of my experience as a band student. This weekend, I had the opportunity and honor to perform at the Wesleyan Honors Festival. This year, Wesleyan Honor Band was conducted differently than other years. It was recommendation-based. To have an honor band be recommendation-based means that the director of the high school chooses the students from their ensemble that they see fit. It takes a tremendous amount of effort from the students not only prepare the audition music, but to prepare and perform the music for the band itself. However, it takes an even bigger amount of effort from the director. Honor bands and other extracurricular ensembles will not be possible if there is a director split amongst the schools. If this student-to-teacher ratio is not fixed, the teacher will not be able to focus on their students. Honor band students are not the only ones that require personal attention from the teacher. The students will have lost opportunities that the teacher should be able to provide. Without a separate director for both the middle school and the high school, the situation will harm, yes, harm, future students and prohibit their learning if they are not provided with the accurate amount of staffing. I want future students to have the same opportunities that I am able to experience now. Opportunities that we have the luxury of experiencing now, that further Bennington as a band and as a district will diminish or completely deplete by restricting the staff for students. Overall, the team teaching model would be incredibly beneficial for the band across the entire district. Students in the middle and high school will see the benefits and rewards of this proposal. Teachers will be able to attend to their students' needs, give them the opportunities to perform in ambitious ensembles, and flourish as a student in the Bennington School District. The situations I have proposed are not hypotheticals. They are things that will happen. They are things that have been happening. Moving forward, this must change. It can change with the help of this new model. 3 dedicated directors can bring the Bennington Band program to its full potential. Thank you for your time and this opportunity.
Thank you, Megan. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Megan.
Madeline Sortino.
Thank you guys for allowing me the time to speak. My name is Maddie Sortino, and I'm a senior at Bennington. I moved to Bennington the summer before my 7th grade year, and coming into the Bennington district, I was eager to get involved in the band program. Mr. Fonda was very open to allow me to hop in with the middle school band with no previous percussion experience. However, it was quite the learning process to understand music notes, rhythms, and musical terminology. For half the year, Mr. Fonda committed 2 days a week to provide a lesson out of school hours. Now let's take that same scenario, but imagine over 100 6th graders needing help learning a brand new instrument. As kids learn a brand new instrument, lessons are needed to keep kids on track. These lessons are not possible without a band director specializing in specific grade levels. There's not enough time for a band director of grades 6 through 12 to have the time to focus on specific students that need the help. If there are different band directors for both middle and high school, students will be able to get the extra help they need and deserve to have. When students struggle, they become discouraged. The lack of lessons and struggling could lead to students to quit even if they have the potential. They lack the support that was needed to make that happen. Our program takes pride in the amount of high schoolers that audition and are accepted into honor band programs. This year, we had a record-breaking number of 27 students get into the Wayne State Honor Band, 10 students into the Wesleyan Honor Band, and 7 students to be selected into All-State. Most of these high school students had previously been accepted into middle school honor bands in past years. This foundation of high number of advanced band students all started in middle school. Middle school is a primary time to drill the basics of band education that creates such a successful high school band as a whole. Within these past couple years, numbers in the district have grown, numbers in the band program in the middle and high school have grown, yet the number of band directors has remained the same. Having one director at the middle and high school has forced multiple honor band programs to be cut, therefore taking away the advanced prep that has created such a high number of advanced high school students. Honor band auditions require preparation, most of which comes in the form of extra practice with the band director. Recently, 6th grade students have been denied the access to forms of extra practice with the band director, and high schoolers have been denied access for lessons for honor band prep due to the fact that one band director has been in charge of over 230 band students. Lacking of staffing has hurt the band program tremendously these past years. These numbers will only continue to rise as the district grows. We could also compare the situation to our athletic programs. Each sports team has many coaches. Football has different coaches for each position, including a defensive line, offensive line, and even more different kinds of coaches. The Bennington district would never approve one coach for the whole high school football team, plus the same coach for the whole middle school team. Our track team has separate coaches for throwers, jumpers, sprinters, distance, vaulters, and relays. As an athlete in track, it is evident that we do not have the best success as athletes if a sprinter coach was also in charge of the long jumpers, shot put throwers, and pole vaulters. Having a separate coach to work with me for long jump, the 100 sprint, and a separate coach for the 400 race has helped me achieve goals to the best of my abilities. Now, this situation can apply to the band program. There are drastically different sections in the band with one director. Percussion is a completely different concept than woodwinds, and woodwinds are a completely different concept to the brass instruments. Other school districts provide the staffing in the band program for multiple band directors for different sections. And all other schools in our class provide separate directors for each middle and high school. Overall, we ask for the opportunities to not set limits on our band program's abilities and let us be able to work to our highest potential. We greatly appreciate the job position being changed to a 9 through 12 position in the Omaha World Herald, and we hope you take into the consideration the need for additional middle school directors per middle school. Thank you for your time.
Maddie, thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak in public forum this evening? Seeing none, we will proceed with the business in our agenda. First up is the consent agenda, which includes the approval of the agenda from of this meeting, approval of minutes of our last meeting, February bills. We recently moved resignations and personnel hiring into consent agenda to kind of streamline things administratively here, and we have some temporary non-resident requests. Tim and I had bill review this evening. Tim, did you have anything noteworthy?
Just was, and I asked before to Dr. Hawk, but just was checking on the baseball club stuff. I noticed it was 2021, we didn't pay them then, but when is that due again for the next payment for 22?
The agreement would look February 1 of each year,
Okay.
but we held on that as we were working through the agreements.
Okay.
So, but yes, February 1.
Okay.
Those being the items on the consent agenda, I move to approve it as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tim. Jody, please call the roll.
Heather? Yes. Valerie? Yes. Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Next up, we've got reports. We'll start with administrative reports and elementary. As a reminder, when you come up to present, please tell us who you are, so we know who's presenting. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Molly O'Connor, principal at Bennington Elementary. I'm providing the elementary report tonight. Lots of great things happening at the elementary level. We have been together now over 100 and some days, so we got to celebrate as our old men and women, but we bounced back quickly and we're back in action. The other thing I wanted to highlight is our Kindness Week. We did a lot of really great things within our buildings, great readings in the morning. We did a fundraiser for Project Pink and raised an incredible amount of money and matched that with our National School Counselor Week. So lots of wonderful things happening in the elementary. Any questions?
Molly, thank you. Next is the middle school report.
Thank you. My name's Sean Hoppus. I'm the middle school principal. I'm going to highlight two things tonight. The second one up there, Aisha Bar Makase won the county spelling bee, which according to Mr. Porter was maybe the first time that's happened for Bennington. So that's a big deal for her, and she'll move on to the next level. So that was a big highlight for us. And then towards the bottom, our high school counselors have been coming over the last few weeks, meeting with our 8th grade about 4-year plans and getting ready for high school. And we are finalizing our 5th to 6th transitions this spring, especially with opening a new middle school that gives us an opportunity to tweak and adjust a few things we've done in the past. So any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Next is the high school report.
Good evening, I'm Matt Livingston, I'm the high school principal. Happy and proud to bring another state championship trophy down to the boardroom for the 2021-22 school year. Our wrestling team went to Kearney 2 weekends ago to compete for the state duels championship and beat Blair 33-32 on the last match of the duel to win our first duels state championship. To stay with wrestling, I had a chance to go out to Aurora this last weekend and watch our district wrestling competition. We qualified 10 wrestlers to the state tournament this coming weekend. I feel like we have a really good chance at bringing home a trophy from the individual championship as well. So really exciting time with our wrestling program right now. To piggyback off of what Mr. Hoppus said, with our guidance counselors, we are speaking with our students at the high school as well. 9th, 10th, and 11th graders going into English and social studies classrooms to get them prepared for registration. Each of our counselors are divided up by alpha now that we have 3 counselors. So each counselor will give the opportunity for all the students and families in their alphabet to meet with them to sit down and go over their registration and look into what classes they're interested in taking for the next school year. And that will happen at the end of February, first couple of weeks in March. We've spread it out just a little bit. That way they have the opportunity to sit down with each of their families, as opposed to having a high school assistant principal or administrator sit down like we've done in the past. Questions I can answer? Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Student services this evening.
Hello, Jody Green, Assistant Director of Student Services. I'm just going to highlight special education right there. So it's true that Bennington is growing, so I do special education numbers. They're kind of broken down by areas of identification. There's 13 areas we can identify in the state of Nebraska, and the 6 listed there are the ones that we have the most identifications in. Just kind of breaks down the numbers there. We are still slightly below the state average, but we'll likely hit that average as we continue to grow. Anything I can answer for you?
Joey, thank you. And then we have curriculum. And
Dee Hoagie, Assistant Superintendent. If you go to page 3 for me, Dr. Hawk.
yes.
This highlights the services we're providing for the spring semester for our elementary students across the district. IRIB is the Individual Reading Improvement Plan required by the state's Reading Improvement Act. Reading services are those provided above and beyond the classroom teacher with our reading resource teachers. And then mathematics as well is provided by our math specialists across the district. We've expanded our services in reading up through grade 5 now. The IRIBs are now available to students up through grade 5 as well. All of our students who qualify for that individual reading plan will be offered summer school programming. And so we will expand our summer school to 2 locations this year. So our beginning list will be 216 students, and then we'll add other students to that. Teachers are meeting this week on Thursday to work on that, finalizing that priority list for summer school for us. So we anticipate a large group of our students. Our parents appreciate those additional services and supports this summer. So any questions I can answer for you on services this spring? Thank you.
Dr. Hogan, thank you. That concludes our administrative reports, and so we'll proceed then to our committee reports. I believe I'm sorry to pass over the superintendent report.
That's quite all
Let's go
right.
ahead and do that.
You had a large list of hires, and we're in the midst of hiring. Currently, we had 29 turn to 30 between the time I wrote this and posted it. We have another 17 to 18 to go that's certificated. We have 17 openings currently in our hourly support staff, with another 18 in addition to that will be needed to open 2 new schools and our growth. So we're looking at anywhere from about 85 to 100 new employees that will be a part of the district next fall. There were several good articles. One was written by the Commissioner of Education, highlighting the good work of leadership, including the Board of Education. That was an op-ed yesterday in the Sunday World Herald. And Friday, Bennington Public Schools made the front page of the Omaha World Herald with the growth of its 2 new buildings.
Does that conclude your report?
That is all that I have, sir.
I think we are safe to then to conclude administrative reports and then proceed to committee reports. I know the Curriculum and Instruction Committee has been hard at work. Who would like to provide a summary of that work?
We did, and just to set a little context for the benefit of students or others in the room, we do have a process where we review proposals that are submitted from educators, and we really appreciate that work. We are not yet through all of those proposals, but with the opening of the 2 new facilities, as we just mentioned, we of course have many educator roles that we're thinking about in that work. We do have a summary of our conversations. We have estimations from the administration that we had approximately $2.3 million that we already spent in the first round, and we are looking at about $1.7 million for this board to consider a little bit later on for additional curriculum and educator roles that we are suggesting this district needs. I think that's about it. We obviously have a good list there for you, and we can answer additional questions once we get to new business to discuss that.
We do have a presentation that will add to this about extending the elementary learning day. And we'll give just a little more information to that at the time the board's ready to approve this list.
Yes, and just to clarify, not a revenue consideration per se, but an important one. So appreciate that reminder and the administration coming with that. Heather, what would you add?
Yeah, that's a good summary.
How are we there? Okay. Thank you, and thanks for acknowledging the budget and the requests that come in from staff. I'd like to just acknowledge and thank the 2 students that spoke tonight, and recognizing that a lot of this is built on staff and budget issues. And just we commend you for your confidence in your public speaking, and we see that as part of the work that you do as students, and then us as the board to have to make those tough decisions. So thanks.
Do you have any questions? I believe that's our only committee report this evening. Is that correct? We'll proceed to the construction report. Is Mr. Berg here?
Mr. Berg is not. We have given him the night off. We have brought before you the talented Dr. Tyndall. She will be explaining a little bit about high school number 2 and the process that we are going through.
Maybe the less talented.
But also, yes, the taller of the 2 is Dr. Wilkinson, equally as talented.
Thank you. High school number 2 programming and planning committee. We've been at work over the last 5 or 6 weeks with the LR group, attending different schools in Kansas City, in the Omaha metropolitan area, and in Sioux Falls to look at those facilities, look at the programming that goes into those facilities. The committee members that are doing this are up on on the board here right now, there's district office administration, building administration. And then at the high school, we determined that we wanted to have staff that maybe would have some context as far as what I would call maybe not standard or stock classrooms. So a social studies classroom, a math classroom, an English classroom look generally the same, whether you go into a school in Bennington or you go into a school in Elkhorn or you go into a school in Sioux Falls. But when you start looking at the counselor's office, you look at gyms and weight rooms, you look at an art studio, you look at the industrial tech lab, we thought maybe we would like to bring some of those instructors with us to see those schools and to see those programs as we continue down this path of trying to determine what does our next high school look like. We then also felt that it was important to have a director of technology, nutrition, facilities. Obviously, all of the board members were invited to go as well. And then we looked at some parents that could help as well to give us, again, some context and some insight on what they felt was important as we make this plan. The goals, again, what's in the school that we currently have. I gave a tour about 3 or 4 weeks ago to some of the committee members just to say, hey, here's what a standard classroom looks like. It's 850 square feet. Here's what all these box lights, you hear those words. What's a box light in our classroom? Here's how many seats our gymnasium holds, so on and so forth. We're going to learn through the programming and building process of others. So we've done that. We've gone to 2 schools, an OPS school and an Elkhorn school in Omaha. We went to Missouri Innovative Campus in Kansas City, and we were in Thomas Jefferson High School in Sioux Falls here this last week. And then plan with forward thinking and a mindset for the future of Bennington schools. What are the results? We want some guiding principles as far as what our vision is going to look like as we move into next fall. What are the programmatic elements that we want in place? We need to identify, what spaces do we want in this new school, and then we have to determine, what's the bond going to look like that could pay for it.
Okay, like Dr. Blumenkamp mentioned, we started this process in early January with this committee, the Programming Planning Committee for our second high school. And it started with teacher interviews and shadowing students, and we kind of looked at what is our high school like today. And then in January, he mentioned we did local visits to Buena Vista and OPS and Elkhorn North tour. We saw such things as in Buena Vista, the teachers didn't own their own classroom. They were shared spaces, and then they had one common area where their planning and prep and their desks might be. We saw a 2-tiered library. We saw a heavy transportation facility where it had students coming in from multiple entrances. At Elkhorn North, they have expansive activities facilities and the arts department. We saw things like a separate entrance for special education, a separate secretary for students moving in and out of special programming. We saw a welding lab, so some different programming and facilities that were different from than Buena Vista. Next, we went to Missouri Innovation Campus, and that was a collaborative effort between Central Missouri State University and the Lee Summit School District. This was more of a collaborative effort, and kids left after 2 years of high school. They, for the post-secondary, received a degree, maybe in technology, cybersecurity, some of the biosciences or health sciences. And so this was a very innovative facility with movable walls, indoor, outdoor kind of like spaces into the classroom. The walls were glass and writable, so you had lots of collaborative spaces, kind of an industrial feel, very open ceilings and open stairs and open spaces, kind of like a college campus more. It was a lot of college students there. The next one was, we went to Sioux Falls on February 4th. We went to Thomas Jefferson. This was more of a traditional high school, but it had 3 different programming elements inside. It had a project-based learning facility where students collaborated in different content areas. So social studies and math might do a project together. They did different ways to assess learning, like I
said, project-based, presentations, not your traditional paper, pencil school system. And the second program that they had was a freshman success. And what this was the freshman was more modeled after a middle school concept and the teaming concept. And we had a team planning. And then they had their traditional high school setting. So 3 different programs within one high school. This facility was expansive and large and a lot of collaboration areas. They are an open campus, so students have a lot of free space that they could go to and do homework or open periods and just really student-centered spaces. And then the final visit in Sioux Falls was at the Career and Technical Education Academy. And what this was, that any school within the Sioux Falls public school system could attend this academy. It was in partnership with the business community in Sioux Falls. It was programming like aviation, construction, media arts, health sciences, culinary, automotive, and had a lot of expensive equipment in it that was funded through businesses and grants through South Dakota, the state of South Dakota. So after our visits concluded last Thursday, the committee met here. The names that Dr. Blumenkamp presented to you met, and we're going to talk a little bit later about some of the actions and the next steps that they're doing. We'll meet again as a committee on February 24th. And then after that, we'll take all the activities and information collected during this committee workshops based on what we've learned, our current realities and different programming available and facilities available. And the district leadership will start to say, this is what we see for the future. And we'll devise a schematic map of what we want a next high school and our current high school to look like. All right, this is a long projected timeline for the high school. You can see we began the process in December of 2022. You can see where we are now. And through this, the programming committee, we hope to have and design a schematic design. Next, we'll go in August in the design development. And then the construction documents will be developed. We're projecting a bond issue or proposing a bond issue in November of 2022. If that passes, then the bidding would begin in March of 2022. And almost a little over a year from now, or a little over a year from now, we would hope for construction to begin on a new high school and an opening in August 2026. All right, what has the committee accomplished so far? Well, from our visits at the meeting last Thursday, they summarized our preferred features and the features we didn't find appealing or part of what we envision Bennington future high schools to be. And the next thing, we looked at the programmatic elements and we talked about what do we want in our programs: collaborative spaces, top-loading gyms, pool, science lab configuration, and all those that have to do with the programming we will offer. And finally, we started defining our guiding principles. DLR will take the information from this committee and they will form and bring back at our next meeting the guiding principles. And these guiding principles will serve as a filter as we make important decisions, reflect on, and hopefully they reflect our community value. That's why it was so important to have all the diverse members on the committee and keep the project on track. All right, that's kind of the highlights of the programming committee and where we're at in the future of a second high school. Any questions or comments for Dr. Blumenkamp or myself? Yes, Dr. Gertz.
I think we all know what you meant, but just to clarify,
March 23rd.
March 23. Did I say 22? Thank you for clarifying that. I'm still in 21 and I'm still 20 years old, right?
May I just have one question? Thank you for that summary, and I appreciate the different constituencies that are represented on the committee and inviting them to such a thorough process of really traveling our region about this too, to kind of think outside the box or see what things other people are trying. So I really appreciate all of that. I'm curious about plans to continue to keep the community apprised of the progress and/or decisions that are being made.
We do have some things on the agenda this evening. For example, hiring of a third party to help survey the community as we move forward. But also, one of the things that was approved earlier on is a communication coordinator. And that person as well will help to continue to keep the committee focused and updated as to where we are in this situation. So there's a lot to do. There's not a specific date or plan to address some of the issues that you just raised.
Thank you.
I wanted to echo the thanks to the committee members, particularly parents and staff who are participating in this process. And I think one of the things I've appreciated early on here is, in addition to thinking about the vision for the new high school, there's been a lot of thinking about the role of the current high school in that environment. So I think that will be a good dialogue for our community. Thank you. Is there anything to cover on the traditional construction report? I know there wasn't.
Right, the only, there's a few change orders which will be down in the agenda later, but progress is being made. And we, by all indications, will meet our deadlines of early June and early July with the finishing of both buildings, Stratford Elementary and Bennington South.
Very good. I believe we have a facilities report next, Mr. Edens.
So, good evening. My name is Jeremy Edens. I'm the coordinator of facilities and transportation. So what Dr. Houck has pulled up here on the board is our facility life expectancy worksheet. There's a couple things I want to highlight on there. High school of the roof, sections 1 and 2 is a modified bituminous roof, which is basically similar to asphalt. Typical lifespan is about 15 years. We are probably going to exceed that, but it's something that the Board of Education should keep in the back of their mind, that eventually we're going to have to switch that out. The other area I want to talk about is at Bennington Elementary. We have 11 rooftop heat pump units that are nearing the end of their life and really hard to get parts for, and they're starting to cost quite a bit to maintain. So it's another area we're going to want to keep an eye on, and there could be some expenses coming down the road.
And something like this, I want to add, that Mr. Eden says, it basically is a running scoreboard of the equipment that you have in the district. And something of this nature is very important to keep in mind as you're looking at building and finance committee, for example. Even though the curriculum and Americanism committee spend the majority of the growth money moving forward with new personnel, and rightfully so, there's also need to earmark monies for repair of facilities or additional needs for facilities. And something like this running scoreboard and equipment is very helpful. So appreciate Mr. Eden's keeping this in front of the board.
Started planning for summer projects, a couple that I'm pretty excited about. We are going to work on a cross-country course over at the high school in the wetland area. So we're working with a contractor to till, level, and seed that course. That should be done this spring, because we're not going to be able to irrigate it, so we're hoping for a wet spring. The other option that I'm working with Mrs. O'Connor is here at Bennington Elementary. The area around the playground has been pretty hard to keep grass growing in that area, so that's something that we're going to work on together. Staffing needs for this summer, I'm looking to add 2 additional grounds crew people this summer due to having to open 2 new schools and move all the teacher belongings and all the desks and everything over. So again, that's an addition of 2. And then summer crew for painting, I'm going to reduce that to 1. So we're only going to hire 1 painter this year because we're not really doing any major painting in the area. Any questions?
Mr. Eads, thank you. Appreciate it. We do have a legal report this evening. At this time, I would invite Derek Aldridge, who's District Legal Counsel, to give us a summary of the issues and findings there. By way of introduction, a few district patrons in the first half of 2021 lodged complaints with the Office of the Attorney General asserting that certain board practices were not compliant with the Nebraska Open Meetings Act. The Attorney General has made some conclusions and recommendations regarding those. And Mr. Aldridge is here to summarize those issues and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, President Byer. Yes, we did receive an opinion from the Attorney General on February 9th in regard to a couple of Open Meetings Act complaints that were lodged early last year and earlier than last year. A couple of things that came from the Attorney General's opinion. One was the timing of public forum. The Attorney General did not find a violation, but did strongly recommend that we adjust the time to make it clear to the public that public forum is part of the meeting. That was part of the new arrangement that you had at today's meeting, moving it after the call order. A couple of other discussion points, making one copy of meeting materials available at the beginning of the meeting at the entrance to the meeting room. Again, Attorney General recommending that we make sure that we do that. I would recommend that we help educate the public to understand that we only have one copy available for everybody, and that they should copy that using their phone, and then if they would like to have a copy of their own, they certainly can send an email to Jody or Dr. Hawk and make a records request to get a copy of that document. But otherwise, we'll give one copy that's sufficient, and then we can either take a picture or write down notes of those documents. Some of the other findings about the ability to record meetings. Obviously, the public has the ability to record meetings. The board does have the right to set reasonable policies and procedures to make sure that it doesn't interfere with your ability to conduct your meetings or other people to observe the meetings. Minutes should be published within 10 days, but there's not a requirement yet that minutes be published on the district's website. There has been a change to the Open Meetings Act, and beginning in July 31st of 22, we will have to publish our meetings on the website. Probably the most logical solution would be to do that on Spark. Since we're already using a Spark school, we're already using Spark to publish our meetings. That's probably the logical place to put it. But otherwise, you could have Rock could obviously put it someplace else on the district's website if possible. Meeting minutes are not required to document what public speakers talk about in public forum. It's really intended to cover what the board is doing as part of its meeting. The last item has to do with the agenda items generally, but specifically as to closed sessions and the sufficiency of the description to closed session items. The Attorney General really was advising to be as sufficient as you possibly can. In this particular case, it had to do with litigation that was pending, and the Attorney General recommended that we go ahead and identify the specific litigation that's pending in that case. A couple of minor things really from the Attorney General, some things that we can always work on. The Open Meetings Act is not easy. The legislature hasn't made it easy. It can be a trap for and weary. So there's just a couple of little things to work on, but otherwise I think we can move forward from this and lessons learned. Any questions?
I guess, if you don't mind, for the people to be able to talk now in front of us, we can discuss back and forth. It is meeting minutes. If they have questions, we can discuss with them what they ask. If we don't have an answer, we can get them an answer, correct?
My recommendation is that you would direct them to the superintendent to have them gather that information.
Okay.
It is public comment instead of ability to speak. It is not necessarily your obligation to respond. Any other questions?
Derek, thank you. I appreciate the summary of the report. And I would certainly say that as elected officials, our primary interest is to serve the public interest. And so the recommendations that the Attorney General had, we shall follow. So thank you. Proceeding now to the Lobbyist Report and what new laws might be coming down.
Thank
Julia?
you. And I would agree, our open meetings laws are not easy to follow. They're confusing and they get changed every year, so I would say I would be in agreement with that. We are on day 25 of the legislature, so we are 5 days from being halfway finished. I've lost count of how many filibusters we have done. I think it's 8 or 9. And remember, they're just doing morning debate and they're continuing with afternoon public hearings. So I think, we've had a couple of consent agendas, which include about 25 bills apiece. So it looks like we've maybe accomplished more than we have. But those filibusters, remember, take 14 hours each. And we have about 3 hours of debate per day for maybe 5 days a week. So we really haven't gotten many new bills with any sort of controversy passed at all. Again, we're going to be doing public hearings until March 3rd. So after that, we have a 4-day weekend and we'll come back and we'll do all-day debate. The speaker, in anticipation of the fact that we're going so slow, has said anything from March 14th to April 12th could be a late night. So most likely we'll be there from 9 in the morning till 9 at night, most nights in March and April. The big talk of the week is priority bill deadlines are due if you want a speaker priority bill this Thursday, and speaker and committee priority bills are due next Tuesday. So by Wednesday, we will know all of the priority bills and we will know which bills the speaker chose to prioritize. And that will lay the foundation for what we will discuss for the remainder of the session. The speaker has said we will not get to all the priority bills, so he's encouraging people to prioritize yet this week. So far, we had 23 priority bills designated and 2 more today. So we're about halfway. But the committees haven't prioritized, half of the senators haven't prioritized, so some of those priority bills will not be heard. In Education Committee, we've been hearing about school funding. One bill came out of revenue, another bill, LB 890, came out of education. So 986 was a bill, you can see it up there, that adopted the Property Tax Limitation Act. That bill was filibustered and that failed. And then LB 891, 890 and 890, excuse me, came out of education. It's a companion bill to 891, which is in revenue. That bill was talked about for a couple hours, but did not go to full 8 hours. And Senator Walz, who's the chair of the Education Committee, pulled that off the agenda and said there's no sense in wasting 10 more hours. We don't have an agreement on the bill. So she's attempting to work with education groups and rural senators, but I don't see an agreement being reached on that. So I don't think much will change in the way of school finance. Is that what you're hearing as well, Dr. Roth? So other issues, they've talked about student loan repayment and forgiveness for teachers, teacher testing, autism screening. A couple of priority bills with regard to education have been prioritized, and next week I'll provide Dr. Hawk a list of those bills, and those will be really the bills that we have to worry about for the rest of the session. Any questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you. On to the Spotlight Report, which I believe covers homeroom in middle school.
I believe middle school
And high school.
and high school.
Oh, and high school. I at least read the cover page.
Hello, I'm Jackie Muller. I'm one of the guidance counselors at the middle school.
I'm Andrea Lersky, and I am a sixth grade reading, English, and language arts teacher at the middle school.
Andrea and I were a part of the Homeroom committee that was created over the last year and the last couple of years to develop homeroom curriculum for our middle school students. Our homeroom curriculum is really centered around the philosophy of creating a relationship among students and adults in the building. And that homeroom time is a place to support kids with that goal in mind. And currently, our homeroom is assigned by grade level according to either their first or their third period class. So kids currently have their one of their core teachers as their homeroom teacher in the morning first thing.
So homeroom typically runs from 8 o'clock to 8:10. Part of that is the Pledge of Allegiance. They also go through the announcements, and then every day there's like a specific activity that we go through as well. So it's organized by weekday. So one of the days is getting organized. We do Toss Up Tuesday, which is about character building. We watch Joe Beckman videos sometimes too. Wellness Wednesday is physical and mental wellness. Thursday is grade checks. And then Free Friday is just team building games.
So just to elaborate a little bit more on the curriculum that the kids are actually doing on each of those days. Monday is really designed for planning, preparation for the week, organization, teaching the kids how to look ahead and prepare for what's coming. Tuesday, like we said, is Toss It Up Tuesday, really can encompass anything. We have it designed around character traits, kindness. We had a speaker earlier in the year, Joe Beckman, that Andrea mentioned here just a few minutes ago. The kids absolutely loved him. And so we tried to incorporate many of his lessons into our current homeroom curriculum throughout the year, and that's been very successful. The personal wellness, we do some physical wellness, but there's been kind of a shift to focus on more mental wellness in our homeroom curriculum to help kids cope with challenging situations when they feel overwhelmed, some different resources that they can have available. Weekly grade checks and goal setting so that they have an adult there checking in with them and looking ahead to what's coming, setting goals, looking back and reflecting on those goals. And then right now, we currently have kids actually preparing for student-led conferences, which we will hold the next 2 evenings. And so we have some time spent on what that should look like. And since our middle school kids come in with their parents, we want them to have an understanding of the expectation of them when they are there and their role in their own conference. We can click on this if you guys would like to see the February calendar for homeroom, just to kind of give you an idea.
I'm sure.
If it doesn't work, we don't have to see that one.
We're gonna skip that.
Okay, that is perfectly fine.
We gathered input from the teachers at the end of the school year to figure out what to do for the homeroom curriculum. And then there was a new team of teachers that was formed over the summer. We worked together to come up with new ideas, and it encompassed teachers from different grade levels. There were exploratory teachers mixed in, content areas. The curriculum was adjusted as we needed, depending on the events going on in the building. So it is a Google Doc. Occasionally, we can go in and change it and add different things if we need to. We do a follow-up survey at the end of the year, and then with the opening of a new building, we will discuss how to keep homeroom consistent across both buildings.
Questions that we can
Any
answer?
questions?
Okay, I think you're going to see some similarities here. My name is Jenny Brooke. I am the library media specialist at the high school.
And my name is Jennifer Smith, and I am one of the school counselors at the high school.
So we have a lot of similarities between the high school and the middle school, but the format looks a little bit different. We meet twice a month. We don't meet daily, but we meet twice a month for 30 minutes. And students, like at the middle school, they are in the homeroom by grade level, but it may or may not be one of the teachers that they have. And those students stay with that same homeroom teacher throughout the entirety of their high school career with us. Like the middle school, the goal is to build a community and build a relationship both with their peers, but with adults that don't have any sort of, they don't assess them. So it truly is just a relationship building community within that homeroom. We go through somewhat the same process where at the end of the school year, we survey our students and get their feedback on the lessons that we've done over the prior school year. Jennifer and I, with input from administration and faculty, then look at that data and see what we need to adjust and change. And then we create that, the calendar for the entire next school year, looking at some of those main components that are actually quite similar to what the middle school does as well. Our lessons are geared to kind of two different things. We have a lot of social emotional welfare. Jennifer's going to speak about that, but then we also use our homeroom time to prepare our students to have the skills and the elements that they need to be successful in their next steps in life.
So this is just the first semester of the lessons which we had for our homeroom. You can see it goes from anything from holding yourself accountable for lessons, your grades, to organizations of yourself. We found, especially with our incoming freshmen, that they struggled with this component. So creating time for them to learn how to use a planner or even things on their phone like Google Keep. We also decided that team building was a huge part of this, especially coming in with some new students, as well as for a different look because with COVID, to create a team atmosphere. So one of the fun things we did is we actually had students create a team song, which during Fridays, Dr. Blumenkamp has done an awesome job of playing that as they pass it in the building, which was kind of a cool idea. As you can see, for social and emotional well-being, we talk about topics like suicide, which can be hard to discuss with students, giving them outlets and resources at the end of those to where they can find those on the guidance website or even throughout the building. Bullying, one of the things that I really enjoyed was on December 3rd, the mental health and mindfulness, just getting ready to go to finals. Also with getting into the holidays is also kind of draining for a lot of not only students, but also for adults. Giving them some outlets and some resources on how they can handle those coping skills, whether it's breathing techniques or different other exercises.
This is our second semester. We have had a few homerooms. We've had 3 homerooms so far. But the other thing that we tend to focus on is readying our students to go out and work on their next steps in life. So one example of that is on January 28th, while the freshmen, sophomores, and juniors talked about their non-academic graduation requirements, the seniors were able to have Zoom meetings with a panel of alumni. We were able to have 6 alumni who had been out of Bennington High School from anywhere from 1 to 4 years, come to a Zoom meeting and meet with all of our homerooms. The students were able to ask them questions and just get their stories. The students had great feedback on how well they were prepared for their next steps by Bennington High School. They were able to talk about some of those questions that students who are getting ready to move out of the high school and into the real world have, where they don't think that we know what we're talking about, but they do want to listen to the students who had graduated that maybe they had looked up to as upperclassmen. So that was a really successful thing that we did. As we move farther into the spring, we will continue to ready those seniors to move on. We continue to ready our underclassmen by having them look at a lot of goal setting, long-term goal setting, how to overcome adversity. And then we also continue to work on that team building aspect to give us a culture at the high school level within those homerooms and school-wide. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you to all presenters on that topic. And I believe rounding out our reports this evening is an update on strategic planning goal number 1, which is 21st century skills.
All right. Molly O'Connor, principal at Bennington Elementary.
Sean Hoppus, middle school principal. Madeline McCann, high school principal.
All right, we are going to give you a brief rundown of the strategic goal number 1, which is on 21st century skills. At the elementary level, all of our elementary schools are meeting in some way, in some of our groups are kind of like the homerooms, but our brigades and our badger groups, using our 21st century skill rubrics. I'll speak to Bennington Elementary specifically that we are using our school improvement plan focused on social and emotional learning, and we decided to use creativity and innovation from our 21st century skill rubrics to focus on. So our staff completed a form to share those ratings of students. And then after our Badger Brigade lessons, we will complete this again to use the rubric to identify if our lessons were able to support growth in this area. This is just an example of what that creativity and innovation rubric looks like.
All right, at the middle school, the last 3 years, I think maybe 4, we've had students self-reflect on the rubrics that I'll show you in just a minute. And we use that information to support students, but also drive some of our lessons wrapped around that. So if we notice that a bulk of our kids are struggling in an area, we will do some lessons during our student support time. This will be the first conferences where the teachers were able to fill these out and provide feedback to families. So those that come in person will be able to get those in person. Otherwise, if they're online or they cannot make it, we will send those home so parents will be able to see those. So the 2 areas we're focusing on at these conferences will be problem solving and decision making. So all of our teachers have filled these out on every one of our students. And then citizenship and personal responsibility. So that will be part of our conference conversations. I think the dialogue between the teams and teachers have went well. So we're excited to have those conversations the next few nights.
Okay, we continue to send those reports out over parent-teacher conferences, both in the fall and in the spring as well. I think all 4 of you have a high school student, so you should have been getting those reports here over the last week or so. It does take a little while to fill those out. Each teacher has anywhere from 115 to about 150 students on their roster. It takes a little while to fill those out and to provide some feedback. So we give them the better part of a week to work on those. And those are available for parent-teacher conference conversations here tomorrow night and Wednesday night. Our students will also fill out their own personal inventory. We will do that on May 6th with our seniors and May 20th with our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. We have added some classes that you've approved for next school year that would fit in line with our 21st Century Skills strategic plan. These were developed out of our Family Consumer Science department. Looking to add semester courses in Intro to Education, Hospitality and Tourism, Housing and Interior Design, and Foundations of Healthcare. We will offer all 4 of those classes at registration here. In a month, students will have the opportunity to sign up for those courses for next school year. Again, with 21st Century Skills, I talked about the tours that we've gone on. With the new high school committee, Dr. Tindall talked about the health sciences, the programming classes that we were able to see in the programming wing, engineering, welding, and then the robotics wing that was at Buena Vista High School in Omaha and at Metro Innovation campus in Missouri. So a few updates of some things that we haven't been doing that we are now looking at doing as far as 21st Century Skills at the high school. That is our strategic planning goal number 1 report. Are there any questions we can answer?
Thank you. It's time for unfinished business then. And the first item in unfinished business are list of construction change orders. Dr. Hawk, could you update us on those items?
Yes, we have just a few. As you can see, pardon my finger and lack of dexterity there. Additional lighting in the corridors a couple of things at the high school stadium. And those are very minimal. And so we have a motion before you this evening.
I move to approve all items listed for construction at Stratford, the South Middle School and the high school site expansion. Project change orders for a cost of $9,874.02. CCR number 12, 27, 8, and 9.
Thank you, Valerie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Heather. Any discussion or questions? Jody, please call the roll.
Tim,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes,
Heather,
Yes.
Valerie,
motion carries. I'd invite Dr. Hokie to give us our update on the return to learn plan.
There's not a lot new this month for you, so I'll just highlight those areas where we have had changes in our plan. So to give you an update on where we've hit our peak in the week of January 17th, we had our highest number of active cases across our district. And as we hit that peak, now we are on that downward slope. We have dropped 85% from that highest peak to where we were last week with our number of cases. No change in our requirements for masking or tracing contact. Quarantine updates have not changed with the Douglas Health, the health department at this point. So we're maintaining all of those pieces as well. We have hosted our third vaccine clinic in conjunction with the Douglas County Health Department. Over 595 vaccines were provided over those 3 times. And you can see the breakdown of 5 through 11-year-olds, the 12 and older, and how they broke down for first dose, second dose, and boosters. So we have not been contacted about another clinic at this point. And then the final update we have for you in this month's report is about absences. We have been keeping track of when a parent has to quarantine a student because of an exposure, or when we need to send a student home because of symptoms. And you'll see in September, we had our peak, about 350 students had to be out based on a parent saying they had symptoms or were exposed. 36 students had to be sent home because of those. And then we saw the downward trend until January, where we peaked again, very similar to what we saw in September. So we're very hopeful that we'll be back on the downward trend as we move into spring. So we've had over 1,200 students, and those can be duplicates, that have had some experience and exposure with quarantining at this point in our district. So we appreciate the parent support to try and keep everybody healthy as we go through this time. So those are the areas that we've updated in our plan. Really no other changes at this time. We continue to leave our ESSER 3 funds open to take any feedback about our recommendation to use those funds to support our reading curriculum. Any questions that I can answer for you at this time?
Thank you, Dr. Hogie. Next, we have the second reading of policy 902.06, which is construction management and risk policy. In January, we had a first reading of this policy. By way of reminder, construction management at risk is an alternative allowed by statute for school districts to manage the construction of a building. Traditionally, we've used a design bid build process. As we've learned about this alternative, the recommendation of the Building and Finance Committee was to add this policy as an alternative for the board to consider that for its new high school construction. So to be clear, the second reading would not say that we are selecting that for a high school, but it would create the option to do so. Dr. Hawk, any?
No, I think you said it well. I think you did have a choice between what the school boards put out and what the Perry-Guestford. I would recommend the Perry-Guestford model as you move forward this evening.
So with that, I would move to add policy 902.06, construction management at risk as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Valerie. Is there any discussion regarding this policy?
Do we know just roughly what it's gonna cost if we were to hire somebody? Is it a percentage again? I mean, we don't know for sure any of it.
No, we don't know any of that for sure as we get into the design of building. But this model allows us to bring that construction manager on board at the latter phases of the design, which then can help pin those costs down. There are percentages that goes along with that, but there are also percentages that maybe a subcontractor would build into contracts as well. So there is a not to exceed number that can be written into an agreement.
Other questions or discussion?
Have we had a second vote?
We have,
Sorry.
Valerie did, sorry, yes.
Okay, I have a question on,
Trying to turn me off. Just kidding, it goes off myself. One major difference is that the construction management at risk is a qualifications-based process rather than a bidding process. Do we continue to take the lowest bid?
What you'll do
That's the
is,
part that I don't understand.
Mr. Aldridge, if you come forward, this would be better answered by him.
You do not have to take the low bid. When construction manager at risk, you hire the construction manager as your contractor. And they are responsible for building the building that gets designed by the architect within the guaranteed maximum price. However, we find over the years that we've been doing this, we've been doing this for 20 years in our office, we have found that there are a lot of advantages with requiring the construction manager to bid all of the work. One of those is transparency. It becomes obvious to everybody what all of the bits and pieces that go into the project are going to cost. The other is the ability to have local contractors in the community who may be voting for a bond issue to have an opportunity to participate in the project. That way, that if they bid the work, they have an opportunity to submit a bid with the work, as opposed to being one of the preferred subcontractors that the construction manager may use. So we typically recommend that all of the work get bid, with a caveat that the owner, the school district, has the option to waive that requirement.
that's helpful.
So we don't have to go with the lowest bid, although our wisdom would lean towards always saving the taxpayer dollars as we can, yet that is not a requirement with this construction management at risk policy.
The construction manager will always be hired on a qualification base. Who the construction manager that you select hires for all of the work that gets done is totally up to us, how we want to do that.
Okay, one more question, not sure who. Is this a trend that we're seeing with school districts?
Yes.
Is this an 80-20 trend? Is this a 50-50 trend? How could you put a number to that? Like, where are we at? Are we ahead of the curve, lining it up? How would you describe that?
It depends on the size of the project most of the time. Larger projects lend itself to construction management at risk more than the lower dollar amounts, because you get that flexibility within there. Mr. Aldridge can add to that.
I think OPS was using construction manager at risk for its junior high schools. Gretna used construction manager at risk for its high school. Lincoln Public is not a construction manager at risk school district, but what I see outside of the metro and outside of Lincoln, a lot of schools use construction manager at risk. And one of the big advantages is that you can bring that construction manager on during the design process and can help the designer do constructability review and cost estimating.
Elkhorn North did not use one, Heather. We found that out in our committee meetings.
No, they did not.
They did not use it.
And then just to clarify, what I think's already been stated is that right now we're approving a policy that would permit the district to utilize this method, which we obviously have not been able to before. Without this policy, we would not have the option, but we can continue to come back with questions as we move down this path if we choose to. Is that all correct?
That is correct. You do have to have this policy by state law and review and use construction manager. Yes.
Helpful, thank you.
Good. I think that's all I have.
Good discussion. Any other? Hearing none. Joey, please call the roll.
Sorry.
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next is the discussion and approval, potentially, of a school calendar for 2023 and 24.
Correct. It's one of the favorite topics of both the board and administration to set a calendar. This calendar is for 2 years out. It is not the calendar for next fall. It's the calendar for 23, 24. As you can see, just some highlights on the board. All staff report on the 11th, start school on the 16th. We have parent-teacher conferences and in-service days about the same. So too is Thanksgiving break, Martin Luther King Day, and a graduation at the end of the year. You're adding snow days into this. The difference in this calendar that has been before all previous other calendars is a week-long spring break. To get that in, you sacrifice one of the days at the winter break, but this does allow for, some would say, a very similar calendar to many of the other districts in the metro area, many of the larger districts, if you will, to allow for that full 5 days, or if you want, the 9-day spring break with the 2 weekends built into it. What it does, though, is take away from the traditional spring break around Easter, and that is the Friday and Monday before and after the Easter. This would host school on that Monday after the Easter holiday, but it would take off the Friday before the Easter holiday. So this is the one that, as we put it out for vote, the one that was preferred by the staff.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt. Is there a motion regarding the calendar?
I'll move to approve the 2023-2024 school calendar with a starting date of August 16th, 2023, which includes 176 student days and 186 contracted days.
Thank you, Heather. I will second that. Questions or discussion? Jody, please call the roll.
Valerie?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Now we proceed to new business, and the first item for new business this evening is bid for a construction display and audio system.
Yes, these are displays that you see behind Jody and I, and the sound that goes in each room. We've found over the years that instead of providing whiteboards, that the interactive display boards, the box lights as they're called, have been more productive, more useful in the classrooms. Mr. Eckman put this out as an RFP for bid. We received those back, and we provide you with the lowest and the most qualified bidder this evening for those 2 items. Box lights, ID displays, and the sound system that goes in each room. This will be for Stratford and Bennington South.
Thank you. A question, yes, for Stratford and Bennington South. There was a budget for this that was not in the construction budget?
There is a budget for this in the construction bill, however, this exceeds that budget.
Okay.
You still have monies in the bond issue because the construction of Middle School South, Bennington South Middle School, I'll get this name right, was well under what was bid or what was estimated by DLR. So this money can come out of the bond issue without overextending the budget.
Okay, so in total, contingency is still under budget.
This extended the line item, however, it did not extend the total budget.
And thoughts on why that budget or estimation may not have been?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Eckman on that. I believe, just like everything else in the last 12 to 24 months, we have to get this order in on the displays, or we were told, like I'm sure you would, any salesman at this point in time, costs are going up. Mr. Eckman, would you like to add anything to that?
Sure. The actual costs on the displays and the sound systems are identical to what we've done in each of the past buildings. Those prices have held solid. We did see a slight increase on cost of copper because the cost of copper across the country is skyrocketing right now. But the prices are still within what we've spent on the other buildings. There is about a $55,000 contingency budget built in here because until we lock those prices in on copper, it's a shifting market. So I did identify that there is some contingency in there with which hopefully we will not have to touch, but we should not have to worry about any overages with this.
Thank you for that context. With that, I would move to approve or authorize the superintendent to enter into an agreement with KC80 to provide box light display systems and audio systems for Stratford Elementary and Bennington Middle School South as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Tim. Any further questions or discussions on this item? Jody, please call the roll.
Heather?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Now we will consider support staff wage adjustments for the current year. Dr. Hawk, could you?
Yes.
Yes.
The administration is making a recommendation to the board that we adjust wages for the current year for many different groups in the support staff. This would include building secretaries, route drivers, paraprofessionals, food service, and head cooks. We looked at the competitive market that there is for employees. We see that we need to make this adjustment starting February 1st. So if you remember, most wages are paid to employees the month after the hours are recorded. So nobody is moving backwards or anything of that nature. Paychecks will go out in March for hours worked in February. So the main focus of this is to retain the current employees we have in the hourly wages. As you can see, these are large percentage increases, but they're in line with what we're seeing in the market. And this is not focused on, as we talk about in executive session later, wage increases that will still be voted on by the board for the 22-23 year. So this is midterm or current year wage increases, and the majority of that is to retain employees.
Thank you, Dr. Hawk. There is a motion for the board.
I so move to approve the 2021-22 adjustment support staff wages proposal as presented.
Thank you, Tim. Is there a second?
Second.
Heather, discussion or questions?
This is just really good news.
I think it's definitely well-deserved. There's no doubt.
In my experience, as well in my professional life, many private businesses have made more than one salary adjustment in the last year as well, just as in the quest for talent, help, and and inflation. So
And I would add to share with your friends that Bennington Public Schools is hiring. Please. How many open positions, Dr. Hoff? You said 14.
16 right now in the support staff area.
Thank you.
any further discussion? Jody, please call the roll.
Mark,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Valerie,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Motion carries. Now we have an agreement, a usage agreement with the district and the Bennington Baseball Club.
We have had a usage agreement with the city of Bennington to pay a fee for the usage of the baseball diamond Cruz field. And we also have an agreement with the Legion, which is the BBC, Bennington Baseball Club, to pay for maintenance and upgrades of that field. So 2 fees, if you will. It has been a practice by the district to pay a flat fee plus additional costs that go along with the upgrades and maintenance of the field. Current BBC board would like a flat rate that would include those upgrades as well. Therefore, the $4,000 fee that was agreed to in 2015 will move to $10,000, and that basically is an all-in. If any upgrades that exceed a dollar amount are requested by the BBC, BBC is to come to the board or the administration through the board prior to anything being built or anything added to the field. So this is above and beyond the city agreement that was agreed to in 19. And then this will be an agreement for the remaining years of the city agreement. There is the attached agreement that you have with you in your board notes this evening. Still needs just a little bit of legal work. And Mr. Aldridge will get that done and completed, and then we'll move forward with the BBC Board of Directors and have them sign off as well. So we're asking you to approve the agreement with the additional support of the superintendent and the legal firm or legal counsel, excuse me, to correct any errors that are in the current agreement as is.
I move to authorize the superintendent to enter into an agreement between Bennington Public Schools and the Bennington Baseball Club for the use of Cruz Field for spring baseball on terms substantially as presented.
Thank you, sir.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tim. Discussion or questions? Jody, please call the roll.
Heather,
Yes.
Valerie,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes, motion carries. Next, we have a proposed agreement with RSP and Associates.
RSP and Associates is a demographer out of the Kansas City area. The district had DLR Group do a study as they could with the skills and tools that they have to determine what the build out and the growth of the district will be. This adds a layer to that, and it adds, as I've looked at their reports, several layers to this. But it does provide the district more information than what DLR has been able to do. It provides a little bit more of a timeline to the growth, provides hotspots for the community, and it would help this governing body with site selection as they go down the road. There are 2 different costs, as you can see in the proposal. Apologies to the audience. Enrollment analysis and future site analysis. So that is a total of $18,500. There are additional costs that may be a part of that as well. Those are very common to add into an agreement. Are there any questions?
Is there a timeline?
This would be conducted this spring and summer. So this would be very useful information if the board was to continue to move down the road for a possible bond issue. This would be added information to support not only site selection, but the growth of the district.
What if hypothetically, we don't agree with their site selection?
You don't have it by all means. It is your choice, absolutely.
That's a $6,500 option that we might not agree with.
Well, and wouldn't they give multiple site selections, I would hope? I mean, are they gonna do a community?
What they're looking at is the growth of the district. And so that has to be coupled with the infrastructure, availability of land, things of that nature. So this is more demographic information, where they believe the growth is going to occur. But it has to be coupled, I believe, with the architectural and engineering firms to see what's most available. For example, it could be at a certain location, but as we know through infrastructure, i.e. sewer and water, and grading, that might not be the best place to go.
So to clarify, that would be potentially multiple sites, like we might get 3 options.
Yes.
Maybe.
Are we able to keep discussing, or do we have to have a motion?
It's okay to ask a few questions, but probably are at the point where we should have a motion. Would you like to make it?
No.
I move to allow the superintendent of schools to enter into an agreement with RSP and Associates for consulting and survey services related to student and facility growth for a cost not to exceed $18,500.
Thank you, Valerie. I will second that. Now, let's have some discussion.
I guess I don't understand the site analysis part of it myself. I feel us as a board, we've talked many times in our committee about sites and whatnot. And I just think that ourselves, we can maybe discuss this and make our own decision on that just to save a little bit of money. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but we have been discussing this. So we have no idea what, where, anything yet. I just don't know if we want to spend $6,500 for somebody to tell us where to put a school when we can maybe decide that on our own. My opinion.
When was the last one done?
This company has not been used by us. DLR Group has given the board some recommendations for site analysis and site selection.
Can we separate this?
Yes, you can. That's not what the motion calls for, but
Yes.
yes,
To amend it, or how?
that's up to
Well,
you.
I'm curious, Tim, because I kind of hear what you're saying in terms of, if we took our drone and got the map of the geography and how that all lays out, we know that there's only certain land that might be available.
Mhm.
And so we kind of already know that. So therefore, why do we need to do this? We kind of already know that. I mean, I see what you're saying there. So can you explain why it would be justifiable to get
Well,
this analysis
Yeah,
done their way?
there is one assumption that may say that they would pick sites that we do not agree with. But there's also the other side of that coin that says they could add information to make a more informed decision that the board does agree with. And then that information then can be carried forward in a campaign that says not only does the board agree with this, but there's supporting evidence that says a third party agrees with this as well. That third party could be a DLR group, that third party could be RSP. So at the same time, an informed decision is always a good decision, in my opinion. So whether you look at this information and say, well, based on our information, we're taking this site as opposed to maybe a third party. But the assumption is probably a little bit early. The RSVP would select something that the board hasn't looked at already. And that RSP, given the information that is coming from DLR, may agree wholeheartedly with the decision and add more information as to why those sites were selected. keep in mind, DLR did select those sites based on topographic information, based on infrastructure. They have a 30+ point evaluation tool that they use to select those sites moving forward. And they graded out each of those different sites for the board. That information can be given to RSP in addition to the demography information that would be added to that. I don't know what RSP will give us. I have seen information from other metro schools that this company has done, and it's a very detailed report.
Are they from Omaha?
Kansas City.
Does DLR Group see value in the additional analytics that they're going to provide? And is DLR Group a source of the data, some of the data that RSP will pull? Or are they pulling additional sort of secondary data sources that DLR may not have referenced?
I believe they're going to be some of the source. But again, DLR is using civil engineering for a majority of their decision-making in what they've selected. RSP is going to be using demographic information, which is quite different, on historical information moving forward in that.
So it sounds like the value that RSP is saying they bring is greater precision in the growth of our population and what that looks like relative to numbers of students, the grade levels of those students. Will they go to the grade level and some of that?
I cannot answer that question right now.
It shows that they're analyzing it. I'm curious about how they'll look into the future about that. But it sounds like that's kind of the core of it, that they will bring more precision about the growth of families and numbers of students specifically and exactly where, whereas DLR was a little bit more general in overall numbers. Is that fair?
That is a fair assessment, yes.
Thank you.
And I wonder along those lines, how that, how the analysis would get, opinion of families,
RSP would not, and associates, the next contract we have will.
I mean, a popular question is that where is the second high school and is it this direction or that direction? And so will there be community input to that question? Or is that?
With this contract?
Or just site selection you're talking?
Well, you
just in
just said
general?
not with this contract. They wouldn't do that. They would do this.
They are not doing opinions.
But we would imagine that the district would do those surveys somehow. Yes.
Typically, yes.
I trust the authority in that. If this is going to make a more precise decision, and this is a big deal, second high school, 2 mascots, different colors.
Again, this would not.
I hear you.
Okay.
Valerie, did you have?
I don't, I'm good, thank you.
So the motion before the board is to allow the superintendent to enter into an agreement with RSP and Associates for consulting and survey services related to student and facility growth for a cost not to exceed $18,500.
That is correct.
Is there any further discussion?
I just feel we're gonna know our own site. I think we should. I think we should be able to figure that out on our own. It's $6,500 that we could put towards something.
Yeah, and I think the way I see this is a decision that requires a lot of information, right? Demographic information and how the district is growing and changing is important. So I don't view this as information that's going to pick the site for us. I think what it may help us do is prioritize which of the sites we've selected might be ideal. And that needs to be done in the context of community input and a lot of other things. So this is one piece of a very complex puzzle that I think is superior to the superintendent driving around in his truck and doing those things. So.
Yeah, I did say that I was done, but since you just said that, my other thought is that DLR has been our chief analyst about this. And there was a piece of margin of error around our projections that they helped us to understand better in terms of just the numbers overall. So my thought is the precision piece, having a party external might help gain another data point, or hopefully more than one. That's a little bit of my thinking around having an external line of sight about that.
There were, they did have findings around housing density and student density in that housing that were kind of unique to this district. So,
Now I am complete, thank you.
all right. Beats the school calendar discussion by a mile. Joey, please call the roll.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Heather? Yes. Valerie?
Yes.
Motion carries. Now we will consider an agreement with North Wall Strategies. Dr. Hunt.
First, this, Dr. Kurtz may address some of your questions and get to the question of, are we going to gather input from the community and how are we going to go about doing so? In the past, we have, administration has devised their own, and that typically has gone out to parents of the community without much contact with those that are not associated with the school district. Bringing on North Wall Strategies allows us to work with a third-party vendor and reach out to the patrons, be it those that attend school, those that do not, in a way that we haven't done in the past. And as you've talked about, this is a very big topic for the community. And I think bringing on this group prior to any campaign helps this governing body gather more input, again, to make an informed decision for the community. So this group specializes in reaching out into the community, not only for the survey, but then analyzing that survey and providing that analysis to the governing body moving forward. So thus, that is why the administration is making a recommendation to the Board of Education to enter into an agreement with North Wall Strategies.
Thank you, Dr. Hawk. Questions or a motion?
I have a question. What fund does it come out of?
This would come out of the general fund.
It wouldn't, there's no way for it to come out of the bond issue fund? And again, I'm showing my ignorance.
It would be very difficult for it to come out of the bond issue fund because when you write language for the bond issue, it is specific for what that money is going to be spent for. So I would not recommend trying to get this out of the bond issue. I would go for the general fund.
I'm curious about the content of this survey and whether it's going to be a census of our community, or are they going to be drawing some kind of random sample? I'm not real clear about what the survey is that's listed here.
Typically, and this is to be discussed and worked on through the agreement, but typically they would take those that are registered voters and start to survey in that regard.
And these are telephone surveys, it says here. And what is the content?
That is to be determined. That is developed by the district in consultation with North Wall Strategies. So the survey has not been set.
We will not give out phone numbers or anything, correct, to these guys here yet?
I don't,
Possibly meaning.
I believe they have more information, Tim, than we have.
That's fine, I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
I move to allow the I move to authorize the superintendent to enter into an agreement with Northwall Strategies for consulting and survey services related to student and facility growth for a cost not to exceed $24,500.
Second.
Thank you, Heather. Further discussion?
When does this begin if this passes?
We would start to work with this group in the next month. So the actual survey, when it will be sent out, probably closer to the summer, late summer, or late spring.
Fair to say that that would align with some work that the planning committee
That's correct.
is doing, so they have work to do and then
Right.
survey.
And the board has every right to look at that survey before it goes out.
Dr. Calderon, this is in your wheelhouse. I'm curious, have you heard of the company or maybe not, or how we came across this company?
I'm not, but they do have, it seems, specialization around bond issue campaigns, which I appreciate. I do also appreciate that you mentioned we would have an opportunity to view the survey. The methods and aim and purpose of the data collection are not clear, at least enough for this person, and granted, this is my wheelhouse. So I would just suggest that we get a lot more clarity around those two pieces, purpose and content, as well as methods and how they're going to be reaching our community for a few more details. So I would just recommend that. I really don't see enough information concerning that here to ensure, we are able to pull that. But that's all I have. Thank you for your question.
Where are these guys from?
The metro area. And yes, they have worked with other school districts in the past, specifically Ralston, Millard, Elkhorn, I believe some others in the metro area as well.
Any further discussion? Jody, please call the roll.
Heather?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Tim?
Yeah.
Mark?
Yes. Motion carries. Now we will consider the curriculum and personnel proposals recommended by the Curriculum and Instruction Committee.
Right. As per the committee's request, we are breaking out just one proposal and giving the board just a little bit more information on extending the instructional day, i.e. adding minutes to the elementary schedule. And so I'll bring Dr. Hovey up again.
Thank you. At the request of the curriculum committee, they asked for input from the teachers across the district as to changing the instructional minutes in each for the elementary school. And so this is the information that follows up on that. Proposal 91 is recommending changing the elementary instructional day from 8:20 a.m. to 3:05 to 8:05 a.m. to 3:05. Our rationale behind this, why this proposal's out there, we would gain 44 hours of instructional time over the school year. With that, we would be more in line with other schools in the metro area. The other piece is that we currently have most of our kids in the classroom starting at 8 o'clock. We have a grab and go breakfast program right now where kids can enter the building and pick up a breakfast and move to the classroom. And teachers have some activities with those students while they're eating their breakfast. So this would allow that time in the classroom with teachers to be counted in instruction. It would also ease, several years ago, we had a really rough winter, and we're having to make up days in our calendar beyond our 3 snow days that had been built in. In the middle school and high school calendar, they start earlier than the elementary, they go longer than the elementary for instructional minutes. So there's an extra 6 to 8 instructional days built into the calendar, where in the elementary, they have only 3 days, should we need that for instructional time. So most of our students are already at school in the morning. We believe that this will actually ease some of our working parents' needs of dropping kids off in the morning, where when school doesn't start till 8:20, that does put a burden on some families to have to manage that later start time. In gathering input from elementary teachers, each of the elementary buildings we met with, Dr. Tindall and myself went out and met with teachers. We had 147 elementary teachers who attended and gave input during those meetings. Overall, the response was very positive. All of the buildings currently are offering that grab-and-go breakfast. Students are entering the classroom beginning at 8 o'clock anyway right now. Teachers are using the time for interventions or extra practice, but now we could count that time as we report our instructional minutes to the state of Nebraska. So we are also looking at other options, a more structured intervention time, and we will soon be proposing our social emotional curriculum materials. And this would give us some reserved time in that schedule to be able to build that in and make that available for the students. So that is a summary of our input on proposal 91. Are there any questions that I can answer for you?
Dr. Hovey, the revised start time for elementary, is that compatible with middle school and high school start times and parents that may have sort of drop-offs at multiple locations?
It is. The middle school begins at 8 o'clock and the high school starts at 8:10. So this would be right in between those two.
I just wanted to note that the committee appreciates, the curriculum committee appreciates the administration that kind of went the extra mile about this one for us. It was really important for us to hear what educator input was about this, and there was a great deal of enthusiastic replies and thoughtful replies about that. And the committee did review those data and appreciate the summation of that here, but we did go into some detail about some of that feedback and appreciate all the educators who shared it with us.
Does the committee have any further updates on its work, or would it like to make a motion regarding the proposal?
I move to accept the recommendations of the Curriculum and Americanism Committee and Administration for 2022-23 curriculum and personnel modifications and additions as outlined in the report and pending the budget approval.
Second.
Thank you, Valerie, and a second from Heather. Discussion?
I think one of the comments I heard in going, seconding what Dr. Calderon said about there was a lot of staff input and review conversation, what was good about it, what wasn't good about it. And one of the things that I remember hearing was, those parents that did their just in time, or maybe were tardy, regardless of what time school starts, that pattern will still be the same. So I think there are more, it was a tough decision, right? There are more benefits to it than setbacks to it. And I think in order to stay ahead of the curve and meet our criteria for hours, that is a necessary thing. So thanks for doing that work.
And then I would just reiterate a couple of things from earlier comments on the committee report, that we yet have a little work left to do. And so I always just want to be mindful. Educators worked very hard to bring proposals to the committee, and there were quite a few this year, but we aren't done yet. although we have made a pretty significant dent in that budget, as you can see from the notes here. But we will do due diligence in reviewing each of those proposals and have probably at least one or two more. Just to catch Dr. Hobie, that was a question. One or two more opportunities to review those, so.
Thank you, Valerie. Any further discussion? Jody, please call the roll.
Tim,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Valerie.
Yes.
Motion carries. Now we'll move to discussion of option enrollment capacity numbers for the 2022-23 school year. Dr. Hahn.
State law does allow a school district to set capacity numbers for option enrollment. They also base that on some criteria related around capacity. Many feel that capacity is if you open a new building, you have empty seats, or if you have empty classrooms, that would allow the district to expand its capacity. One can see the thought behind that. However, there is a limit to budget. And as we just passed new personnel, that has to be taken into consideration as well. Therefore, capacity is, for Bennington Public Schools, is not necessarily based on the amount of square footage, but the amount of staffing that is allowable under a tight budget moving forward in a very rapidly growing community. Therefore, the administration makes the recommendation to close option enrollment for the 2022-23 school year based on a resolution that is before you.
And I do move to approve the resolution to set grade level capacity enrollment for policy 502.02, non-resident students, and regulation 502.02R1, non-resident student option enrollment as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Valerie. Is there discussion on this topic?
We had 154 leaving the district to option out.
Yes.
Okay.
Um,
Can you tell me, I mean, they haven't moved out of the district, they optioned out.
That's correct. So there are many different reasons for that. A lot of times that's centered around childcare, or sometimes it's family oriented, related maybe closer to work, or maybe where somebody else has gone to school. Therefore, the other side of that may be activities. Sometimes, for example, I'll just take one, swimming. So maybe swimming's offered in another district, not offered in ours. Therefore, that activity provided in another district, people will go to those. But we are seeing a larger increase of those that meet the state requirements for maintaining 2 years of consecutive residency and then moving out of the district. By law, they're grandfathered or allowed to stay in our district or the district of that 2-year option. So we are seeing a much bigger number take advantage of that state law.
Of the 40 students that are opting back in but aren't here because of the grandfather clause, age-wise, how about like all around the board?
We do have that broken down. I can't tell you what that is specifically right now. But yes, across the 13 different grade levels.
And if I'm reading that right, they're opted in because of the clause.
That's
Yes,
correct.
Correct, of the 40, yes.
Other discussion? Jody, please call the roll.
Heather,
Yes.
Valerie,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Mark.
Yes. Motion carries. Now we will review superintendent goals for.
I have modified the superintendent goals to reflect personnel that has been approved by the board. And that is to coordinate efforts with assistant superintendent and district operations and communications coordinator. So what you'll see in red are those things that are modified. Obviously, there are some that were taken out. These were reworded, not necessarily dropped. as we move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Hawk. As I reviewed, I did note that, the deletions were more rephrasings into goals to onboard new staff and realign processes in the district office in support of that. So,
The 5 main goals have not changed. Indicators under each have been modified.
questions for Dr. Hawk? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve the recommended superintendent goals for 2022.
Thank you, Heather. I will second that. Is there further discussion?
Just one question around the high school, and obviously so much good work already happening about that. And which is that primarily? I imagine that can kind of live under all of these 5 in terms of the things you'll be thinking about around that. But is there one that you see where that lives most?
I think we're in the midst of it. I think gathering community input, making sure the community, the majority of the community, because I don't know that you'll get 100%, but a majority of the community is comfortable moving forward with the high school. That can include site, that can include, the amenities within the building. So gathering that input and moving forward with that, making sure that the Board of Education has that in a readable and usable fashion.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Jody, please call the roll.
Valerie?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Motion carries. At this time, the board will discuss going into or consider going into executive session for the purpose of discussing administrative and support staff compensation for the 22-23 year. In fact, I will move that the board go into closed session at 8 o'clock for the purpose of a strategy session with respect to employee negotiations as an executive session is clearly necessary for the protection of the public interest.
Second.
Thank you, Valerie. I would like to clarify that the board intends to take no action coming out of executive session, and the discussion regarding administrative compensation will not include superintendent compensation. Jody, please call the roll.
Heather?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Those of you who are not sticking around to watch us adjourn, thank you, and have a safe evening.
I'd like to offer a public service announcement, if I may, related to the upcoming election. If you are interested in having a seat on the Board of Education and you are a newcomer, those applications need to be in by March 1st.
Thanks, Derek.